Rhaenyra is bold. So at first, I think before I sort of looked at her like this bold and careless woman, but the story has really made sure not to position her as this quote unquote like harlot who's just looking for pleasure. Her story is relatable. It's not that easy to, sire a child with a gay man, right? She okay, so if we really go comes down to it, let's remember that Damon is the one that introduced her to sex and her sexuality. He's the one that sort of unlocked that. And when he was introducing her to that, he talked about pleasure and the importance of pleasure. But he did talk about duty versus living your life and enjoying the pleasures. But it seems as though Rhaenyra wants to have her cake and eat it too. It seems as though she wants to have the pleasure, but she also wants to do her duty. And we see that in her pursuit of Damon, right? Who she truly loves. But aside from that, we also saw that in her relationship with Leonor, her husband, and the fact that she didn't like the idea that he wasn't attracted to her sexually. So it's difficult for them to lay together. And so for her, she just figured, this man loves me, let me have a kid with him. And sure, that's fine. But I think if she was really a dutiful woman, if she really prioritized duty, she would ensure that she quote unquote mounts Leonor and has a child with him so she has true children, if she was really going to prioritize duty. But it seems as though she's conflicted with duty versus her duty versus her pleasure, and that kind of is her inner conflict. And that sort of at the same time is something that she might battle. She's another thing. I watched like the reviews from the actors talking about it, and the actor who plays her basically talks about her being abandoned all her life. She's always being abandoned from her mother first, and then her father, her Allison, who was her best friend, then Damon. So she has these abandonment issues in her life that she's sort of trying to rectify with. So I think that's an interesting element, and seeing how that plays into her desires to be wanted. Her choosing men that want her, as opposed to choosing someone who was probably be disgusted about the idea of having sex with her. She just craves to be desired because she's always been abandoned. She always complained about not having anyone on her side. And she told that to her father in, I think that was episode 2 or 3, that she felt alone. She was abandoned and nobody's there for her. And I think that was kind of where, at least in those pleasurable moments, let her at least have somebody that was there for her. Who was also had to abandon her, right? He also had to leave her. So I think Rhaenyra is a very interesting character, very multi-dimensional, and I can't wait to explore and get to know her more. She isn't this typical hero that is sort of like a Jon Snow that you just absolutely love and adore. She's not that. She seems like, yeah, there's good in her. But is it good, or is it just the fact that she has this unfair injury, which is a tactic that we use in screenwriting, having unfair injuries to your characters. And because of these unfair injuries, you fall for these characters, you support them. So with her, she lost her mother, she lost her father, her best friend betrayed her, Damon played her, so we've seen her experience all these unfair injuries in her life. But really, what makes her a great person, aside from just being a spoilt brat that just gets what she wants? So I don't like, for me, of course I'm rooting for her because I know she deserves the Iron Throne, but at the same time I don't necessarily like her character. It's not, I don't dislike her, but she's quite a bland character. So I'm very curious to see who she truly is. She seems to be somebody that's like sharp with strategy. She seems to be so much more bold, and I'm just curious to learn who she is through the series. So that's another interesting thing when it comes to Rhaenyra. All right, let me go down here. I have a few notes. So another thing about Rhaenyra's like selfishness, I would call it kind of her selfishness or her carelessness, is just this idea of her just like making out with Damon on the beach in public, just like doing whatever she wants. And I think it very much reminds me of Cersei Lannister when she became queen, and she was like kissing her brother Jaime. This is in Game of Thrones. She was kissing Jaime, like I think he opened the door, it was the last season. She started kissing him and he was like, whoa, like someone might see us. And she's like, whatever, like she's queen, right? She's queen, she'll do whatever she wants. It's this sort of like entitlement, this authority that Cersei earned that authority. But let's remember that Rhaenyra inherited that authority. This is why I'm still coming at her for being kind of a spoiled brat, because she almost has this audacity that like, and it's a generational audacity that she inherited from her lineage, right? That I can do whatever I want because I'm not only just a Targaryen, but I'm the heir to the Iron Throne. So it's quite bold of her to stand there and make out with him in public. Also, when your children are being accused of being bastards, she's quite bold, and not just make out with him in public, also have sex with him in public. Oh my God. And you could have been caught, but no, you're not going to live in fear because of that authority that you possess. But it's like these careless moves are going to, or are weakening your claim to the throne. And for someone who was never chosen as the heir in the first place, you would think that she would be more careful with her throne. But at the same time, we have to remember that she has very limited guidance in her life. She hasn't had that many people train her. She lost her mother. She hasn't really had anybody train her or guide her or be her mentor to say, don't do this. And this is also part of her desperation in seeking Daemon, because he was supposed to be that person. He was supposed to be that person to train her, to guide her, to do all those things. But he didn't, right? And so he was supposed to be the one to do that, but he left her. So who does she have? No one. And so she's just kind of figuring this stuff out on her own. As we do in life, we just figure things out. Another thing that was interesting is her relationship with Leonor, right? Her husband. We have to think about how careless these actions were for her to actually, even though she justified it, it was very careless for her to still pursue these men. Okay, it makes sense that he couldn't sire a child, and so therefore in her mind, wow, let me just like at least let me have some heirs so they can not. She was probably thinking her having heirs was actually going to legitimize her throne, but not when those heirs are bastards. But at least she has sons, which is actually more powerful than if she was barren. If she was barren, I imagine they would have said, no, 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 no. So it actually makes sense. At the end of the day, she does have heirs. She has boys even. And so it does kind of help, and it's better than her being a bastard. But at the same time, because, in those days, they would have blamed the woman. If she doesn't have kids, it's the woman's fault. They wouldn't have blamed the man.